Hi everyone, this is our project of racism and I hope you enjoy it.
What's racism? Racism takes many forms and can happen in many places. It includes prejudice, discrimination, or hatred directed at someone because of their color, ethnicity, or national origin. People often associate racism with acts of abuse or harassment. However, it doesn't need to involve violent or intimidating behavior. Take racial name calling in jokes, or consider situations when people may be excluded from groups or activities because of where they come from. Racism can be revealed through people's actions as well as their attitudes. It can also be reflected in systems and institutions. But sometimes it may not be revealed at all. Not all racism is obvious.
Is there racism in Mexico? If yes, how does it work? Well, racism is generally thought to be a problem between black and white people. That is about segregation or what happens in other parts of the world, but not in Mexico. However, racism occurs between fewer güeritas and more morenitas, between city people and town people, among others. This happens because members of a dominant group try to preserve their privileges and power using the imposition of certain parameters of a strategy, that in this case are prejudices or stereotypes about another group that is at a disadvantage economically, politically, or in education. Other important topics are the parameters, for example, the idea that white people are prettier and more successful, or that indigenous people have in their blood being lazy. These ideas are not based on anything and they manage to have real and toxic consequences in people's lives. Some do better while others have limitations.
How is racism related to the phenomenon of migration? A human rights approach to global migration governance is needed to ensure the protection of human rights of all migrants and their families. Issues related to the enjoyment of economic, social, and cultural rights are particularly crucial for many migrants. Very often, they are confronted with severe discrimination in housing, education, health, work, or social security. Laws discriminating against non-nationals, along with programs and policies that fail to address their specific needs and vulnerabilities, often result in migrants and their families being unable to access basic services or only being able to do so at levels that do not meet international human rights standards. Migrants arriving irregularly in a new country are often detained in administrative centers or in prisons. Overcrowded immigration detention centers often have poor access to healthcare, inadequate food, sanitation, or safe drinking water, and the lack of separate sanitation facilities for men and women. Equally, there is an increasing tendency to criminalize migration offenses, as opposed to treating them as administrative offenses, which was, in some cases, resulted in violations of migrants' rights.
So, how can we start solving the problem of racism? First, education. We have to raise awareness of the importance of human rights in everyday life and show how they empower us all. It is also important to learn about the difficulties minorities face every day. As individuals, we have to bring visibility to the problem. For this, we can organize our community, school, company, neighborhood to inform ourselves. We can support non-racist and minority-owned business to fight systematical racism. We can make videos and posts about the human rights matter. We can promote stories in our social media about people who have stood up for their and others' rights. These are some ways we can use our privilege to help others. National and local authorities should have officials publicly stress the importance of human rights in our country, through videos, statements, social media, etc. They can also use sport events, music festivals, or art exhibitions to promote human rights. Politicians have the most important work, which is fighting and ending systematical racism.
How to be a good ally? A good ally to people who experience racism is someone who actively recognizes and addresses racial inequality around them, whether it's at school or in their workplace, in their community or online, or among family and friends. Being an ally is not about saving people who are living with racism. It's about being aware of inequality, calling out where it exists, and above all, listening to people who experience it, and elevating their voice. The first step toward being a good ally is to understand the ways in which racism appear in society, and how each type of racism impacts people. Educating yourself about racism also includes learning about your own privilege. Each of us engages in society from a different perspective, and with that comes certain experiences, beliefs, and preferences.
No two exercises are the same. Unless you have experienced racism and inequality, it is very hard to understand the experiences of individuals and communities who have lived with this reality. We can, however, build our empathy for the experiences of others by actively listening to their stories and experiences. Truth-telling and storytelling are two important tools to educate the broader community about inequality and disadvantage. A good ally can listen to these truths and stories without being defensive or judgmental, and can help to address the underlying institutional and systematic barriers that contribute to inequality and disadvantage in our society.
Having conversations about race or racism may not always feel comfortable, particularly with family and friends. But shying away can mean that important opportunities are missed, because these conversations are a chance to change people's thinking. It's important that any conversations about race or racism focuses on actions instead of individuals. We all have bias of some kind. It's part of being human, and criticizing people for their prejudices can make them defensive. And that's why it's often more constructive to focus on your actions and how they impact others. Another good way to engage friends and family in discussions about racism is to share stories with them. Newspaper articles, TV programs, or content on social media is often a good way to prompt discussion or provide new perspectives.
We hope you enjoyed our video. Have a nice day and thank you very much.